I've learned more from print competition than I have from any photography class I've ever taken. Print competition, you have 5 different judges talking about dozens and dozens of different images. They're not talking just about the photography, but the print quality itself. The type of paper, the texture, the ink density. It's just absolutely fascinating to me. Considering myself an artist enabled me to think beyond what I thought of myself as a photographer, which was sort of 8x10 glossies. An artist it's a very broad definition. An artist can do anything they want to do. So I decided to take my images and my love of fine art paper and combine them. I've always been fascinated with artwork, not just the work itself, but what it's printed on. Every time I go to an art gallery or a museum, I always look up close and what kind of paper or canvas is it printed on. To me, that's as fascinating as the work itself. So Canson Infinity is their line of inkjet printer papers. They make a wide variety of papers, high gloss, canvases, but the papers I'm most interested in and most drawn to, especially for my work, are the matte finish papers. I'm sitting here touching them as I'm speaking. I just love the feel of a nice, thick, textured fine art paper. Some of them are papers, some of them are rag, and they feel like a fabric, and some of them are really soft, almost a velvet finish. I just love that. Sometimes it's appropriate to use a high gloss paper. And some of my images, I want really deep blacks and really bright colors. So for those, a gloss or semi-gloss paper is appropriate, but not all of my work. So for these papers, Canson makes them, I have them. Sometimes it's what my clients want, and so that's what I print for them. But when it comes to my fine artwork, I'm looking for a deep matte paper that has a lot of texture to it, almost like a watercolor paper. They have a whole line here of papers that fit in that parameter, but have different levels of texture and different quality of paper to hold the ink. So there's 5 very specific papers that I prefer for my work. They're exactly what I'm looking for, and they fit all of my needs. The first one here is the Aqua El Rag. It is a watercolor paper. It is very textured. It's very thick and heavy. It just feels beautiful. It has a softness to it. I love what it does to my images. They look like old paintings. When I make cards, I make a lot of like 5x7 cards. I'll use this paper, print on them, score them, fold them, and they fit beautifully into a nice parchment envelope. The one thing with this paper I have to be really careful of is faces. There's so much texture on it. I really don't like how it looks on a face. So if the face is partially obscured, it's not a problem. If there's a full face, then I definitely don't want to use it on that paper. The next paper, as far as smoothness goes, is the Printmaking Rag. Now, this one is more of a fabric to it, almost a cotton, and you can feel on the back of it. It almost feels like a t-shirt. But the front of it has texture, but not as much as the watercolor paper. So I don't mind printing a face. It doesn't obscure. It definitely has a little bit of a, it's not as bright white, which is great for me. I don't want a really bright white paper. I want some of my images to look old, like a fine art, old world, old master painting type of look to them. But there's so much detail that shows up in these these prints. It's just absolutely beautiful. It really holds the blacks. It's a beautiful matte black, but you can get a lot of detail in all the deep grays just as they're going to black, and I just love that. Now the vellum museum rag is probably my favorite paper. I use this for a majority of my print competition prints. It has a little bit of a texture to it, not too much, a little bit more smooth, but it's just this beautiful matte porous paper. It holds the ink so well. It shows colors beautifully and detail, so much fine detail. I just love what it does to my images. You can go really dark with it and it still shows detail right down into the blacks. Another favorite paper of mine is the Edition Etching Rag paper. Again, it has a little bit of texture to it. It's much heavier. It has a nice thick weight to it. It's just absolutely beautiful to hold. It's definitely more of a paper, a fiber. It doesn't feel like fabric like some of the others do. So it's just a slightly different feel to it. Again, a little bit of texture. I try to be careful of the faces on this one, but beautiful color on it. And again, beautiful with the blacks as well. Just a beautiful paper. The smoothest of all of my favorite papers is the Rag Photographic. It is beautiful, nice thick art paper, a little bit lighter than some of the others, but really smooth. Completely matte. It doesn't have any sheen to it, which is exactly what I'm looking for. It's a little bit whiter than some of the others, which is great. It's not bright white, which is perfect. I don't want anything that's bright white. But again, holds all those details. Beautiful with the skin tones and faces. Hair, every strand of hair shows all the gradation in color from lights all the way down to darks. It's just absolutely beautiful, beautiful paper. I love it. Again, one of my favorites, and even holds blacks really, really well, which is very difficult to do for a matte, porous paper like this. Canson has been in business making paper since the beginning of time. They are very good at what they do. They know how to make papers that are museum quality. That's all I need to know. I know when I print on them, they're going to last forever, and they're consistent, print after print after print. I wanted something that looked really handmade, and handmade by its very definition is inconsistent. So to have a product that is consistent but looks handmade is just incredible.